Hello, my name is Kate Wexell and welcome back. So in the past video, I just talked about how I graduated college in only 2 years with zero debt. And honestly, that led me to found the Compass College Consulting, which is my college consulting firm where I'm going to coach you on how to graduate college with less financial burden. However, before I ended up doing that, I actually went through the very tedious transfer admissions process. And of course, some of you are probably thinking like, what validity do I even have to be a college admissions coach? Because every single business that you see out there is always some kid who went to an Ivy League university. So I wanted to walk you through how I also did get into top 10 universities, even though I ended up ultimately graduating from my state university. So I do have my transfer application pulled up here on my phone and I'm going to go through it. But just as a disclaimer first, I honestly hate these college stat videos because every time that we go out and watch them, we're always looking for some magic formula. And instead, kids are just rambling off all of these different numbers and activities. And the thing is, we are all looking at that and then trying to compare ourselves to people without actually being given the context of how do people get these opportunities? Because most of the time, it's some kid whose parents work at NASA and let them into the labs or give them some internship. But you don't know any of that and that your life physically cannot be the same as theirs. So I wanted to not necessarily explain what you should be doing based on my activities that got me into Northwestern, WashU, Georgetown, and Minerva University as a transfer applicant, but instead I wanted to share these stats with you very briefly and then actually discuss why they were important and real formula that you should be using if you want to get into those types of schools. I feel like that will be more beneficial for all of you, and just remember, I did not get into these schools the first time that I applied because I did not know what this formula was. So let's get started. The very first thing that every single application is asking you for is information about your classes, your coursework, your GPA, and your class rank. And so I went to a public high school in Illinois. So it was not in Chicago, it was down by St. Louis in the suburbs. I was in a class of about 615 people by the end, and I was ranked 36, which placed me in the top 6%-ish. So I was not in that top 5%. Most of these schools are looking for that. I did have sort of a weighted GPA, if we're basing it on a 4-point scale, which my school did not, so I'm sort of converting it for you guys, of 4.25 out of 4.0. So that means that I mostly took honors and AP classes during my time in high school. So any of these schools, that is exactly what they're looking for. And really when it comes down to that, sure, your school might not have 20 AP classes available. Mine certainly didn't, and actually students could only take a maximum of 7 AP courses physically, with how our school had things set up with the prerequisites to take the classes. So all the colleges are really looking for is that you took a large percentage of the honors and AP classes that were available to you, and more importantly, that you took ones that were actually relevant to what you did. So my senior year, I didn't take AP science classes. I had taken AP physics before and done honors science before that, but it was not at all relevant to the public policy major that I ended up with or any major that I applied to college with. Thing is my test score. So one mistake that I made the first time that I did not make during my transfer application was submitting my SAT score. So I did submit my ACT score, which was a 33 that I got on the first try, and that's the thing as well. So schools are not looking for you to have that perfect SAT score. They're not looking for that 36 ECT score. All that they're looking for, and you can look at all of the college admissions data that came out during the Harvard admissions scandal, all that they're looking for is that baseline of a 33 ACT or a 1470, 1480-ish SAT. And then that number, up until a perfect score, they rank exactly the same when they're grading your criteria. So then once I actually got to college, I was studying at the University of Missouri. I applied after my first semester of college, and so I had initially been a journalism student. I ended up switching my major over to public policy, but that wasn't included on my transfer application. However, I did have a 4.0 GPA during my first year of college. So that definitely helped if you are transferring and trying to transfer into one of those top 20 schools. You definitely need to have at least a 3.9 GPA, if not a 4.0 GPA. And then I was also in the honors college and had received a couple of different awards from the honors college. So that really helped me stand out as saying yes, I am a good student. The other thing is I tried very hard that first year to, of course, I had to take my journalism classes that were required. However, I made sure to also take at least one math class and at least one science class because they do want to see that you're still taking all 4 of those core subjects, even if it's not particularly relevant. And that's honestly something that needs to change about the transfer application process. One thing that I do think helped, though, is that since I was in the honors college, I managed to be able to take a couple of honors courses during my first year. So even though there's not a great way to evaluate, the rigor of courses in college, at least just having that little honors designation will help you out, and colleges will think that that was a more challenging class, even if it wasn't, and I was just reading a bunch of literature in a little group with like 4 people. Another thing that I think also helped, and you can do this with transfer applications on the Common Application, is you can actually submit continuing education courses. And I believe that this is mostly designated for veterans, or if you are coming back in after like getting an associate's degree and you've been in the workforce for a while. But it just shows, like, especially if you're wanting to change majors and that's one of your reasons for transferring, you can actually demonstrate like, okay, I didn't have the opportunity to learn this at my university, but I took the time to learn about this topic outside of school, and now I can bring that in. So I included several of those certificates. All right, now let's get into the part that everybody really, really wants to know about, and that is all of the activities. So I'm just gonna read them off because, guys, it doesn't matter that much, even though it's the most important part of your entire application. So let's see, what did I have listed? Right, so I was leading a project through our university's Center for International Development to help solve period poverty in Kenya and Tanzania. I was the founder of a 501c3 nonprofit that was devoted to sustainable development. I was an Eagle Scout and Boy Scouts. I was a Girl Scout Gold Award recipient. I mentioned that in high school, I was our principal trumpet player. I also mentioned piano. I had been learning piano since I was 5 years old, and I got a couple of awards for that, and I taught piano for 5 years in high school. I mentioned raising and training my horse. I also mentioned writing, that I had worked for several different news desks and published articles that had reached over 1 million people, and I published a poetry book, and yada, yada, yada. All of this goes on and on and on. Let's see, there's even more. All right, so during my first semester and second semester of college, I was in a U.S. Department of State fellowship for environmentalism. I was the communications intern for a climate change education program across the world. I was the top ambassador for a renewable energy policy group. I wrote for an environmental news desk at my campus and only actually published like 2 whole entire articles, but that was still on there. Hooray. Oh, then with my nonprofit, I was actually selected by Bill and Hillary Clinton to go to this big conference in Nashville and represent my nonprofit to 1,000 other students from around the world. I won a national essay contest about renewable energy. I was on my campus's library standing committee, so I helped them get 50 new poetry books to add to their collections. I was doing a research fellowship for social science research. I won the Penguin Random House Creative Writing Awards, got to meet Amanda Gorman, only virtually though on Zoom while I was sitting in a McDonald's in the middle of nowhere in Missouri, not at my university's town. Don't worry, Columbia, Missouri is actually kind of cool. But no, I was just like on a camping trip with my family, swung into that McDonald's, said, hey, Amanda Gorman, asked her a question through the Zoom chat, happiest moment of my life. Put down how I had been an all-state musician for French horn, even though I had only been learning that instrument for 2 years when I got that in high school, so I guess that shows you how low the bar is. And that was it. I know, right? I definitely didn't just list off like 15 different activities that seem completely unattainable. So, okay, what do we actually take away from this now that I just listed all this jargon off? So the important thing with your activities, and what you can see from mine, is I had a couple of different categories. There was a lot that I did in my life that had to do with media and communications and sort of that writing. And then also I had a lot to do with environmentalism and sort of that international development. So then I was applying to transfer as an environmental policy major. So what is important with that? Well, policy includes a lot of writing. It includes a lot of persuasion and being able to talk to legislators and make convincing arguments. And that also includes making graphics. And then the second thing is I was actually working on climate change, and I was able to show like, okay, I didn't have the opportunity to learn about this in high school, but I chose to go on to college and get involved in all of these programs. These colleges are looking for you to have that definitive passion because they're trying to find applicants who are actually going to take this knowledge. They're already solid in their field, starting out from a very, very young age, and they're going to take that and run with it because they're trying to look for who are the next Nobel Prize laureates, who are the next Olympians, who are the next people that are going to win big, big awards and become super, super famous. Because they want for you to then give back to the university and encourage other people to sign up because that's how they grow up their endowment, okay? You can't have a bunch of people graduating and making 40K and then donating back to you as alumni to grow your endowment. That's just not how it works. And so then the other thing that helped was that I started to achieve things at a national level. So like national essay contests and writing contests, actually publishing things, doing high-level research. I was the only undergraduate on my research team, for example. I was able to be named as like one of the top 14 freshmen in my class of 5,000 students that were in my grade. So it's all of these things like that. Oh, a US Department of State fellowship. You know, these are things that seem bigger than just that community level. Now, I'm personally a big advocate for local action. I think that it's really, really stupid that all of our applications want for us to be doing these things at a national level because most of the time, all that means is that you're on a bunch of Zoom calls and you're actually having other people do the work for you on the ground. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. You want to be the actual person doing that yourself to feel that moral sense of worth. But no, that's not what any of these schools are looking for. because they think that Zoom calls means that you're some big leader. You know, we can all forget the fact that Elon Musk actually does go to every single one of his factories and like delegates stuff on the floor, not over Zoom. When you're applying, some of these activities are really the most important thing because they're trying to see what is that actual potential. You already have the grades. Like grades and test scores, that's just a box for you to check off. So once you have that, it's really the awards and activities that distinguish you and show who you are and what you are capable of. A couple of other things that I'll mention. So if you are transferring universities, I know I didn't list off a single thing really that I did at my university that wasn't like a committee that I was on. But you do have to actually join some clubs because another thing that they're looking for is like you have to live at their university for the next 2 to 3 years if you're transferring. They don't want some, you know, socially inept kid to be walking in and, you know, freaking everybody out. So you should show that you actually got involved at your university. So because of that, I did mention a couple of other clubs that I joined, and I was very diligent about joining clubs and leadership positions within them. So a few things that I mentioned, I had founded a chapter of the American Conservation Coalition on my campus, so I was the club president. That really stands out because it shows that like you really wanted to actually change how your campus functioned. Then I was also the director of alumni relations and the Facebook chair for my sorority. I was the secretary of the Science, Health, and Environmental Journalism Club, and then I was the communications chair for Women in Media, which was a club on our campus. So every single club that I joined for the most part, other than Model UN, like I was in a leadership position by my second semester of my freshman year. So they're like, okay, whatever community this person is in, they're going to actually try to be engaged and involved. Okay, so now let's talk about letters of recommendation and essays. So I'm going to make some videos in the future about how to actually write these essays and what you should be telling your recommenders. However, I honestly don't think that these are actually critical parts of your application. In scholarships and fellowships, they are essential. Like this is the only part of your application that really gets to distinguish you. But in college applications, like it's kind of like if somebody writes you a really, really crappy letter, or if your essays are just super bland or like very inflammatory and offensive, like yeah, that's going to be a red flag. But everybody has this mentality that you have to write some big sob story. And it's like, that's not true. The only thing that I think really helped with my essays and my letters of recommendation, which you can't even actually view because of FERPA, is that I made it very, very clear in every single essay by using this formula of like, all right, here is a very specific example of why I'm interested in the environment and climate change. All right, now let me tie this back to what I have now done with that information and with that knowledge. And now here is how your school could actually help to propel me forward to this future in a career in environmental policy. So like that's literally the formula that you need to use. There is no need to share about how your parents died in a fire and you became Batman and you've been saving the world ever since. Like, I mean, come on guys, like that's not necessary. But it's literally just about why do you care about the thing that you care about? What do you want to do with that? And how will that school give you that knowledge to actually do it? And then that way they can feel confident that you would actually be engaged in your studies and that you would be attributing your success to what this college has brought you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this. I'm going to actually be going into depth a little bit more in all of these different areas with how you can improve your applications in the future. So remember to give me a thumbs up and then subscribe to my channel for more content. All right, thank you.